Welcome everybody. Hi, I'm Nobody. Today I want to talk a little bit about common sense, or at least how I keep hearing common sense being used in politics. I've got my new sweatshirt on here. I'm very proud of my military service. Those of you who have been watching know it was my birthday last week, and this is what I ordered for my birthday. So I'm wearing that today. So we're going to talk about common sense, and I don't know that common sense is as common sense as it sounds, but I can tell you that in my mind, the reason politicians use the words common sense is because if they say it's common sense and you act like you don't understand why it's common sense, then you look stupid because it's common sense. And obviously, everybody understands common sense. But I would argue that anything in our government is not simple, as simple as common sense. For those who've been doing it for a long time and working in government, some of the things they do may be common sense. But I would say most of the decisions they make are based on complex problems with many factors and are certainly not common sense. But let's talk about this some more. So I think the term common sense is used to control the narrative. To me, it's a psychological strategy used by politicians to get you to accept what they are saying. So I've got a whole bunch of things there in the middle that seem to me like they should be common sense. I won't cover every single one of them, but I'll let you use your imagination and think about whether all of those are common sense. But let's look at the first two here, automotive repair, and we'll talk about fishing and stall recovery. So automotive repair, how complicated can that be? Because we know that all the kids that didn't do well in school, that's the only thing they know how to do is go out and be mechanics, right? Certainly not. But I can tell you that a guy that I know, um, somebody came in with a car and their car wasn't working right, and they said, "Whenever I do this, it makes this certain noise." Well, the mechanic says, "Well, that's this problem." And he's like, "Well, how do you know that? Because you're obviously just a dumb mechanic. So how could you know these things?" Well, schooling has its values. I get that. And I don't discredit anybody who's going to school. But experience means a lot too. A guy's been doing something for 20 or 30 years. He's pretty smart. He may not have a college education and a piece of paper on the wall to verify that, but he's been doing it for a while. And he's been doing it so long that just by listening to a sound, he can tell you what's wrong with the car. Now, is that common sense? I don't think so. I don't think so. These people that have been working a trade for many years are brilliant in their field, and we should give them credit for that. And to say that some of the decisions that we're making is just common sense to me is just silliness. It's ridiculous. How about fishing? Fishing can't be hard. We all know how to fish. A rod, a string, stick a little squiggly worm on the end of it, throw it in the water. Hey, you're fishing. You can catch any kind of fish that you want. It's that simple. It's common sense. Well, those of you who are fishermen are probably sitting there thinking, what an idiot. And I'm going to pretend like I know about fishing, but my understanding is water temperature can make a difference. What about the type of fish that we're trying to catch? What kind of things do those fish like to eat and that we use for the bait? So is that common sense? So if I say it's common sense, and you're not going to ask questions because you don't want to feel stupid. But I would argue that fishing, at least to do it well, can be very complex. How about stall recovery? You're a pilot, and your task is to recover from a stall. Well, common sense, all you have to do is restart the engine on the plane and you'll recover from a stall. Well, those of you who are pilots are laughing right now. And a stall in an airplane has nothing to do with the engine, more so with the wings. So what seems like common sense may not actually be common sense at all. So I hope you're kind of getting what I'm trying to explain about common sense. That to me, common sense is a matter of perspective. So if you know how to do certain things, well, maybe it is common sense for you, but for those who don't know anything about that topic, then it's not common sense. So for those to say that making a decision like, raising tariffs is complete common sense, because if we raise the tariffs, then we're going to get money from the other countries. But I think if you talk to an economist, he might have a different answer. So there's my spiel on common sense. So what I'm saying here is, if you hear the term, it's common sense, we'll question that, because it's probably not. And if people are trying to shut you down and stop you from asking questions because it's clearly common sense, well, don't feel stupid. Do not feel stupid, because you should be asking questions. You're with your friends and you don't want to talk about a subject because you don't want to look stupid because it's common sense. Well, maybe it's not. And maybe that's how it's designed, because politicians don't want us to ask questions and think about things. They want us to just accept them as common sense and then move on. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is being right and wrong. And I can tell you I've been wrong plenty in my life. I was a school teacher for many years, and there were times when I was corrected by a student, and your pride kind of gets in the way, and the first thing you want to do is kind of get mad and start to defend yourself. But what I would try to do is I would pause, consider what they were saying, and then say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. And let me explain to you why I was thinking what I was thinking. And then it would make more sense on why I was wrong. So that's how conversations should go. But we've got a president that thinks he never makes a mistake, and he's omnipotent, almost godlike, and knows everything there is to know. Although he doesn't seem to understand that the Great Lakes are not at the same elevation as our oceans. Okay, so let's listen to this video of Donald Trump.
The hard way to do it is exactly what I'm doing, but the results are going to be 20 times greater.
Mr. President, you asked...
And remember, Trump is always right.
And what do you say to Americans?
If you look at what I've said over the last 10 years, Trump has been right.
Trump is always right. So he uses little things like, we're going to do it better. It's going to be better than it was. Our country was destroyed before, and we're going to fix it. We're 20 times better now. Well, maybe we are. I don't know. But I certainly would like to have a little more detail on what part he considers to be better. Because for many American people, I'm not sure they're feeling the betterness. Here's another video.
I mean, these are the facts we have to get out. And, there's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about,
Fake.
affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. Just say it. Affordability. I inherited the worst inflation in history. There was no affordability. Nobody could afford anything. The prices were massively high.
Massively high, like eggs. Eggs were massively high when he took office. But for many folks who can see outside the box just a little bit, will recall that there was an issue with some kind of disease going through our, whatever those barns are where they raise lots of chickens. So I don't know if it was the bird flu or something else. That I don't remember. But I do remember that that's why the prices went up. And it was at a time that maybe people liked eggs during Easter, maybe. So you can say that or take credit for bringing down the price of eggs, but maybe the reason the prices of eggs went down is because all those farmers out there who are raising chickens slaughtered all those chickens with the diseases and got their farms back up and running, and all their chickens were laying eggs again. So talk about common sense. Who fixed the problem? Policy from the White House or hardworking Americans who are raising chickens? Next. So here's my graph. He said Donald Trump says he inherited the highest inflation ever in the entire world. Well, if you looked at my post the other day, during World War II and World War I, inflation was over 20%. So you can go back and check those facts out, and don't take my word for it. So 20% is way more than 3. So I would not consider 3 being the highest in our U.S. history. So when Trump took office, that's what that red box is. Trump 2.0, his second term. So back in January, he took office and inflation was a whopping 3%. I don't see a decimal or anything after that, so I'm assuming it's 3.0. Okay, months later, it did go down. So Trump could take credit for that going down. But then if he did that, then wouldn't he have to take credit for what you see going back up after April? Well, no, what he'll do is say from January to April was all Donald Trump because it went down. And the reason it's going back up is because of Joe Biden, who's not the president anymore, and his horrible policies is why it was going back up. But if we look on the top right of the graph, you'll see that there's a 3 on top of that bar too. And that's September, okay? Because this chart came from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, who are now under the thumb of the president and are not reporting as often and as accurately as they used to. At least I have that suspicion. So it started at 3%, and right now it's at 3%. So when I went to school, 3 equaled 3. But apparently now the 3 that existed back in January was Joe Biden's 3, which was terrible. And today, the 3 that we have belongs to Donald Trump and is 20 times greater and better than the 3 that we had when Joe Biden was president. So I'm calling him out on that. That's a lie. Now, does everything Donald Trump say is a lie? Well, there's probably some things that he says that are true. But the point I'm trying to make in all this is if there are some things that are not correct, then why is it so difficult or why is it so unpatriotic to ask that question about other things that he says? Because if we believe that everything that Donald Trump says is correct, then that means anything that anybody else says that disagrees with Donald Trump must be incorrect. Let me say that again. If we believe that everything he says is correct, then that means anything and everything we hear elsewhere has to be misinformation, has to be false, because he's always right. 3%. 3% at the beginning of his term. It's 3% in September. Now you might say, but it's December now. So what is it now? could have gone way down. So let's take a look. I pulled this up on my phone here. See if it's going to let me see this. And this comes from the Cleveland Fed. I pulled that up. And what I found was core CPI in December is 2.99%. So Trump definitely showed us, because I am way off now, because 2.99% is way better than 3%. So I will accept that I was wrong in this case, that Trump is right, and things are 10 times better than they were when he took office, where inflation was 3% and now is just a mere 2.99%. All right. So Trump calls a lot of people stupid, and it seems like everybody in the White House now are saying the word stupid. Now I see the Democrats starting to swear and call other people stupid. So it's like, let's take the most despicable leader and example to our kids that we've ever had, at least in my lifetime. And now we want to win an office. And now we're starting to do the same things that Donald Trump does. So I see other politicians, Democrats. So it's like, so that's their position. So we're going to do just like Donald Trump. I'm going to start swearing on my posts. And then what? We're going to start lying too? I don't know. So here we go. So everybody loves this lady. She looks very, very attractive, very pretty. Works for Donald Trump there, and you can see that's from Fox. Until she starts speaking. And then when you close your eyes and listen to her, sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard, and we realize that on the inside she's not near as pretty as she is on the outside. So let's listen to what she has to say.
President Trump does support or find acceptable?
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind. He does not support assaulting law enforcement officers who are simply trying to do their job.
Really? He supports officers who are just trying to do their job, like on January 6th, when he was sitting in his office there watching the peaceful demonstration that was going on outside the Capitol, and they were busting through the windows and bear spraying the Capitol police and throwing them onto the ground, climbing through the window, and he didn't care. It's been, what, a month or so? Was it October? There was the No Kings demonstration a lot of people had. I participated in that, the one in Muncie, Indiana. And somewhere in there is a picture of me holding the flag up, and that's where that happened. Did Donald Trump at that time speak favorably about the protests? Did he encourage it? I don't think so. So what the heck is this lady talking about? Donald Trump did not encourage any kind of protest. He talked down and talked about how his numbers were higher than, and that there wasn't anybody out there. Nobody was protesting. They're paying people to go out there and protest. Now, if you encouraged people to protest, then why wouldn't you just accept that instead of all the belittling talk? It's like, it's common sense. Well, same thing with calling people stupid, is if we call people stupid, then you'll stop asking questions, because then you'll feel stupid when somebody calls you stupid. Make sense out of that. Probably the least most presidential president we've had in my lifetime. I believe Lyndon Johnson was president when I was born. I'm 60. Now, some of the early presidents I don't really remember because I was just a kid. But I don't recall at any point listening to a president of the United States talk the way our president does. And the only reason he talks that way is because the American people love it. People are sitting there and cheering when he criticizes a reporter and calls them stupid. And he calls the Democrats evil. The Democrats represent half of our population. So on national television, he tells all of his followers that the other half of this nation are evil. I mean, what kind of president does that? I mean, even the worst presidents, leaders of any other country, I've never heard them speak. So when we're talking about stupid, that kind of talk is about as stupid as you can get. Let's see if there's anything more about stupid.
Just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let them in. Are you stupid?
The Biden administration let the Afghan people in. I'm going to pause for just a second. I'll be right back. Hi, I'm back. My wife just got home. She works at the church, and I didn't want you to be part of all the commotion of her coming back and getting out of the car. So anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, we were talking about Afghanistan, and Donald Trump is calling this lady stupid for asking this question, like it's common sense that it would be Biden's fault that Afghans are in our country. Now, many of you may not know this, but I served in Afghanistan in around 2014-ish time frame. The job that I had a translator that worked with me on the things that I did. Many of the patrols that left and went outside the wire at Kandahar had translators with them. So these are people who are from Afghanistan, who speak the language of Afghanistan, and helping the Americans who are fighting or occupying, or whatever word you want to use, in Afghanistan and trying to secure things. So there were a lot of Afghanistan people who helped us in Afghanistan. Now, if we would have left them there as we were exiting Afghanistan, how do you suppose the opposition, the people that we were fighting, would treat those people that we left in Afghanistan? And what's even more disappointing is back when that happened, Donald Trump was criticizing Biden for leaving them there. And now he's blaming Joe Biden for the people that he brought from there. People in conditions that were families of those who helped us while we were there. And he's calling this lady stupid. It is a completely valid question of why is he blaming Biden? And the fact that we don't ask that question and everybody just falls in because it's common sense. We don't ask those things is just ridiculous. So we want to talk about stupid. I'll tell you what's stupid. What's stupid is that display that's happening right there in our White House on public television, national television, in front of our friends and allies. I mean, that's just amazing. So, So I am nobody. That's my discussion. I was getting ready. I was thinking disgusting, but that's my discussion about common sense and why we're calling people stupid on national television. Is I think it's to try to show the American people that if you ask questions, you're stupid, or if you don't understand the common sense, it's because there's something wrong with you and you're not very bright. Because I can think there's numerous times when Donald Trump says that people aren't very bright, but he's just skipping past that now and he's just going right to stupid. So he is right when he says our country is embarrassing. It's embarrassing to our allies, friends, neighbors. But it's not embarrassing because it's the United States. What's embarrassing is that we elected a person like Donald Trump to represent a country that many countries held so very high in esteem. And we are becoming what we are. So be strong, America. Love thy neighbor. Together, I know we can do better. I'm nobody.